Welcome to another episode of Personal Brand Blueprint. I'm Dave Polykoff of ZenPost.com, where I help you attract, convince, and convert your ideal client online. Again, go to ZenPost.com to work with me directly on figuring out how to launch, grow, and monetize your personal brand today. And on today's episode, we have Conor Cunneen of IrishmanSpeaks. Today, we're going to learn about how Conor has used the power of humor to grow his personal brand. So Conor, welcome to the show.
Hey Dave, great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're gonna have a lot of fun talking today, but I want to first start with just getting a better sense of who you are and what you do so we can kind of pry into that business model a little bit more. So let's start with the dreaded question that everyone gets asked, which is, what do you do?
Right, okay. I'm an Irishman, believe it or not, happily exiled in Chicago, and I've been working on my Chicago accent now, Dave, for 25 years. Nailed it, haven't I? But it's important though for me to maintain the Irish brogue in one sense, because my brand is Irishman Speaks. Irishman Speaks. And the idea is, and my objective is, to improve people, performance and productivity with a smile. And I do think every organisation, large or small, or individuals, want to improve their people, their performance and their productivity. And if we can do that with a smile, we're well on the way to satisfying the client and improving their productivity and satisfying their objectives.
So it sounds like really a lot of people could utilize what you're offering here, but who's mostly like the ideal person or client that would benefit the most from what you offer?
Well, quite honestly, it is any organisation that wants to improve their people performance and productivity. Realistically, you can only work to relatively small groups at a time. So when I go into an organisation, I might just be working with the manufacturing team or supply chain team, or I might be working with, I do a lot of work into the healthcare area, so I'd be brought in to speak to nurses or to consultants within the area. So anyone that really wants to improve their people performance and productivity, I'm not a KPMG or one of the larger consulting groups, but if it's any small to medium-sized organisation or a large organisation with a small-ish core of 50 to 100 people that they want to change the behaviour, improve the behaviour, which hopefully already is quite good, that's the kind of group that I like to work with.
And so Irishman Speaks, very well branded name. This is a branding podcast. So walk us through, how did that name come about?
Right. Well, one of the things I do say when I'm talking about marketing is that it's so difficult to be able to position yourself from the get-go. It often is, and most regularly is, a bit of a stumble. You're at the bottom of the hill and you got to climb that hill. And when you're starting off in business, I mean, it's a slow trudge. And when I came over here on a corporate move, after I left corporate, I was doing some consulting, and the name of the business was growfoodserviceprofit.com. But as I was being asked to speak at events beyond the food service area, I realized that I had some really good content that would be relevant for so many different audiences. People were appreciating the content and the humor, and I believe humor is important to enhance or reinforce your message. It's not an objective on its own. And over a period of time then I said, you know what, let's go with something different, because I was doing more keynote speaking, and we stumbled, kind of, I'm not sure how, on Irishman Speaks. Checked it online, it was available, and I thought, yabba dabba doo, this is good.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's very fitting and memorable, which is always important.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of tagline where at the end you say, with a smile.
Yeah.
Talk us through why that ending with a smile is important to you.
Right. Well, the reason why I believe it's important, Dave, is that you feel better when you smile. And everyone on your audience as well feels better when they smile. If during my work I can get you or the team that I'm dealing with smiling, chuckling or laughing 4 or 5 times during your keynote, they're going to feel better. The neurotransmitters pop in, and when people are happy, they connect better with people, and as a result of that, I try to make sure I've got good humor in my presentations. If I'm doing workshops, and Lord above, you've been involved in some of these workshops are brain numbing kind of thing. Some of the education sessions that you got to take when you're doing continuing education are mind-blowingly bad. And one of the ways to try and keep the audience engaged is to use relevant humor to reinforce the content that I've got. So I always say, Dave, I'm not a comedian. I'm a business speaker that uses relevant humor to reinforce the messages and connect better with the audience to help them to change and enhance their behavior.
So it sounds like humor, being able to connect with the audience on that type of level, helps kind of break the ice. What would you say to people though that would say, "Oh, well, I'm not a comedian. I'm not funny. How am I supposed to do that?"
Do you know, no one has ever asked me that question before. And my answer is pretty simple, and it surprises people, but I say you don't have to be funny to be funny. And people say, the Irishman has lost it. You don't have to be funny to be funny. My view, Dave, is that over the last week, you and your audience, if they are average, and they're not, I know they're above average, okay? If they're average, they will laugh about 15 times a day or smile 15 times a day. Now, as your audience is above average, they're laughing or smiling 25 times a day, okay? But the fact is that most people don't recall what they laughed at or when they laughed. And my basic core message is that if you pay attention to the things that put a smile on your face yesterday and the day before, write it down, put it into your iPhone or Android notes, you're building up a repository of information and humor. You don't know when you're going to use it, but the next time you've got a presentation and you're looking for some piece of content to reinforce the message, and that's what humor does, reinforces the message, you then have a repository that you can dive into, maybe pick something out and use that. And I can give you a few examples as we go on if you like.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, well, just give you one example. I went to my cardiologist a couple of weeks ago. Thankfully, it was only an annual checkup, but I went to the cardiologist. The following day, I get a note back from him on the healthcare app that I've got, and it says, Mr. Cunneen is a well-nourished male with a history of, and I'm thinking, well-nourished? But anyway, but the second sentence starts off, this is from my cardiologist, it starts off with, he is a Manchester United fan. And I'm thinking, wow, I laughed at that, and anyone I've mentioned to since, they laugh at it or they smile at it. No, that what I've actually done since, Dave, on a couple of occasions when I'm presenting is, I'm talking to you and your audience is interested in building a personal brand. Okay? One of the ways you build a personal brand is you connect well with people. One of the ways you connect well with people is by listening to them and empathizing with them. And that guy listened and empathized with me. But what I'm able to do though is take that little humorous anecdote that I did not create, I just captured it, and use that as an example and say things like, you can appreciate how impactful that was for me. He obviously listened. What is it that you do as an entrepreneur, as you're trying to build your brand, that shows that you are listening to your audience and that you're connecting with them in a relevant way? So that's just a simple example of something that popped up. That was about 6 weeks ago. I was at the cardiologist. And by the way, the reason why I was at the cardiologist, I told him, was because Manchester United are so blooming bad at the moment, my heart is in bad condition. So that's how that came up.
You can charge the bill to
That's
them.
right, yeah.
Yeah. And so at the beginning you mentioned you focus on 3 key areas. I think 3 Ps. Can you kind of walk us through those 3 areas?
Yeah, 3 areas that in terms of building a brand, I've got a concept called the gift of gab, Dave. And gab is an acronym for goals, attitude and behavior. Now, a couple of things about that. One is that an Irishman talking about the gift of gab, who would have thunk, all right? But basically what I try to do, and I encourage your listeners and viewers to do as well, is to try and find material and content and programs that have good titles that relate well to your brand. So the gift of gab obviously relates well to my brand. And very briefly, gab is about goals, it's about attitude, and about behavior. And in the time that we've got, the one I just concentrate on for a few minutes is G is for goals. Okay, and the basic idea here is I believe, and I know you understand, that when we achieve our goal, we feel better. And what I encourage people to do is to look at micro goals during the day that will help them to feel better, but will also help them to enhance their connection with the client. Now, they're micro goals. Before we go to micro goals, I talk about a macro goal. And the basic macro goal, and this is something that each of your viewers and listeners should think about. We spend some time trying to decide what the macro goal is for each person in the room. But the basic question I put to people is, what do you want to be famous for? What do you want to be famous for? Now, not like Lady Gaga or Kardashian or someone like that. It's what is it that you want your clients or your audience or your customers to say about you after you have left them, or when they're in the Starbucks and someone is looking for a referral and they say, hey, David is a really good interviewer and he works really well with people in building relationships and building branding, etc. If you want to build a brand, I think you need to be clear as to what that brand is going to be. So the first question, the macro goal, is what do I want to be famous for? Then I say to my group, all right, we've asked that question. A lot of the time when we're doing it, I ask them the question, but I say, I'm not going to ask you what your answer is. You've got to decide that. But I will now provide you with 5 micro goals that help you to achieve that macro goal. And again, one of the tricks I use for speaking, Dave, is that I use acronyms. So the gift of gab is an acronym: goals, attitudes, behavior. The micro goals spell the acronym CHAPS, CHAPS. So I can say during my presentation, okay, chaps, I'm going to give you 5 micro goals. And then I might go something like, what? There's women in the audience as well. Oh, okay. Oh, chaps and chapesses, okay? Right. But what I want to do is just concentrate on chaps here. And the 5 micro goals that you can use and implement that will help you to achieve your macro goal are the following. Now, the basic idea is that if I achieve a micro goal, I feel slightly better. And if I achieve another micro goal, I feel slightly better. So my theory now is that I'm going to provide you chaps with 5 micro goals that will make you feel slightly better, but will also build a connection with your audience. So the first micro goal is, I'm sure, Dave, you agree that when someone compliments you, you feel better. Yeah? Okay, all right.
Always.
So I've walked through that for a little bit in my work on presentations, but basically the micro goal is, have a micro goal that today I will compliment one of my team. I compliment one of my customers or vendors. Now what happens? Because I've set it as a micro goal, I hear myself complimenting that one person. The neurotransmitters, dopamine pops in for me, I feel slightly better. But you sure as heck can appreciate that the compliment is going to make that other person, team member or customer, feel better as well. So it's a win-win situation. And very briefly, I do get questions sometimes about, well, it's not always that easy to compliment people. And I say, okay, I agree with that. And then I throw out the line, look, you can always find some way to compliment people. You could say something like, wow, your hair doesn't look as bad today as it did yesterday. Something like that. But that's goofball. But what I'm doing there, though, is kind of using that piece of humour just to reinforce the power of the compliment. That's another example of where I'm using the power of humour. And so what I do is a compliment. One other point I would make on this, Dave, is that when people are having difficulty finding reasons to compliment other people, when you're with your team, ask the question, what did we do well yesterday? What did we do well yesterday? Someone's going to pop up the hand and they said, well, we were actually able to get that order out to Michigan on time. It was way ahead of schedule or something like that. What do you say? Well done, fair play, compliments to everyone is around the table, etc. If you're struggling for reasons to compliment people, and you shouldn't be in general, but a really powerful question is, what did we do well yesterday? Okay? So, that's the first element of the compliment. Do we keep going with the rest of the chaps? You happy with that?
Please do.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So the next one is H in the CHAPS acronym, and that's about here. What did he say? He said here. Okay, here, all right? By here, I mean here, my goal is I will hear the words thank you from one of my team or one of the people I'm dealing with today. Now, to hear the words thank you, I've got to do something for that team member. All right? So when I hear the words thank you, I realize, hey, I've achieved another micro goal. The dopamine kicks in slightly for me, makes me feel slightly better again. The person, though, I've done the task for is sure as heck going to appreciate, I'm sure, what I have done. You're building a win-win relationship again. So we've got compliment, we've got hear the words thank you, and the A in CHAPS, Dave, is for address. Now, by address here, I do not mean that little pink chiffon dress that I was seen wearing on Facebook over the weekend. That should not have been published, Dave. Has it been taken down? It has? Okay, all right. So no more there, all right? Okay. So, but by address here, I mean address people with their name when you're in conversation with them. I would make I go into this in more detail, but what I would make a suggestion that the most important word in the whole conversation when I'm talking with you is Dave. The most important word in the conversation and the most impactful word when you're speaking with me is Conor. And if we can appreciate that the addressing people with their name helps you to build a real connection, and you can drop it in once or twice in your presentations or in your conversation with people, don't overdo it. It does help to connect better with your audience, and it helps to build that relationship. So part of the CHAPS acronym is compliment, hear the words thank you, address people with their name. The next one, Dave, is P, and P is for positive. And the basic idea here is that you have often been in meetings, and all of your audience have been in meetings, where Debbie Downer comes in and sucks the energy out of the room. And then to make it worse, her twin brother Danny comes in and he puts whatever energy is left in the room. But if people can suck the energy out of the room through negativity, I do believe you can push energy, you can push joy and productivity into a group and into a team by using positive words and positive phrases. So the micro goal here is that I will go into work today or with my team, and I will deliberately and intentionally use a positive word or a positive phrase when I'm in conversation with them. So you could use words like amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly, Guinness. Hey, Guinness is a positive word for Irish people, Dave, okay? But the basic point here is that if you do that on a consistent basis and are seen to do it on a consistent basis, what I do believe is if you tie that in with the compliment, hear the words thank you, address people with their name, and use those positive words, after a while you will be recognized and referenced as being amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly. Let's go for a Guinness or whatever your beverage of choice is. And you'll be, because you're doing that, you genuinely will be creating a teamwork and a camaraderie within your team. It is, and what I say, Dave, is that you need to be intentional in doing all of this. I heard the new CEO of Boeing on the news program the other day on CNBC, and he was talking about we need to change the culture in our organization. And I'm thinking, well, good luck to you, mate. You've got about 1 million employees there. I really have no idea how you're going to change the culture. Because the bottom line is the culture in that organization has been created by management or senior leadership all the way down over the years. Unless they were to change all their leadership or have those go through serious culture programs themselves, and not the people on the shop floor who need to change their culture. That's always the view. But I wish them well on that. It's a huge and enormous task. But I do think, though, that if they were to take the CHAPS concept into their organisation, it's a simple one, and regularly compliment the people and address them with their name and use positive words, you're going to have a more happy a group of workers. I'm not saying it's going to be utopia or anything like that. But the final one, when I mentioned happy, is S is for smile. And the objective here is to put a smile on someone's face. And if we started off by saying, I believe in the power of humour, that when you smile, you feel better. When you put a smile on someone's face, they feel better as well. So if you can find some way during the day to put a smile on someone's face that you're dealing with or you're presenting to, it will help you to better connect with that audience and with that person that you're dealing with. And I'm not saying it's particularly easy, but simple little things you can do, like if you have seen an interesting newspaper headline or a funny newspaper headline, maybe use that to reinforce the message that you've got. If you've seen a cartoon that you like, maybe you can use that. No, be careful about copyright. I don't want to end up in San Quentin prison or anything like that. But I do suggest though that for teams that have regular meetings, the weekly meeting, sales meeting, supply chain meeting, manufacturing, whatever it is, one of the best ways to start a meeting, and a number of my clients are now doing this, is start the meeting with a joke. Okay? So, and basically what we're saying, I say to the clients is, all right, you know the importance of the CHAPS concept, of the gift of gab. You are saying you appreciate the power of humour. So let's deliberately and intentionally bring this to our meetings. So what I would encourage you to do is at the start of your weekly meeting, okay, Dave, this week you're going to come up with a really bad joke. And the worse the joke, the better, okay? The following week, maybe Maria has been tasked to come up with a bad joke. And all she's got to do is go to the Googler, and Google on the Bing, as I say, for a funny piece of content about leadership or marketing or sales or whatever it is. Tell that to the sales meeting or the meeting that she's in. Get a few good groans and say, oh my God, that's worse than Dave's one from last week. But what happens is it starts with a little bit of humour. Then the next question, the first question on the agenda should be, what did we do well in the last week? Okay? Because you know at these weekly meetings, first thing on the agenda, problems. Second thing on the agenda, problems. Third thing on the agenda, problems. If, however, we started off with a little bit of humour and then the question, what did we do well in the last week? We're starting on a positive note. We're probably having the opportunity to compliment one or two people in the team, and then you can go from there. So that basically is the CHAPS acronym. I've taken up far too much of your time, but hopefully it's useful.
No such thing as taking too much of my time when all of it is valuable. I love that concept, Connor, and I'm going to use your name. Let's talk about, you've formulated CHAPS. You've spent a lot of time kind of conceptualizing that, and it sounds like it's because of experiences you've had in your life where those things have been useful. Walk us through kind of the origin of how you actually created this CHAPS concept. Like, how did this come about that you were like, I need to put this into like a framework, if you will?
Well, I think the framework was probably the last thing that came, but when I've been doing presentations to organisations, I do a lot of work, Dave, with people who are in job search. It's not an income stream, it's just a real passion of mine, because I was in that situation once. And when I initially wasn't in job search, I saw the pain and the frustration that was eating into people who were unemployed. That's how they define themselves. And that's one of the things I believe is important, the use of words. Anyone I'm dealing with who's in job search, you are not unemployed. You're in job search. It's a different mindset. And what I found was that I had messages that would resonate with them. I took those messages along with the corporate experience that I had, and I realized that I had thoughts that help people to grow themselves. And I would say, all right, you've got to be able to walk into an interview 12 foot tall and bulletproof. All right, so you may have got 4 no letters yesterday, and that really kills you. But you still got to be able to walk into the interview. So I try to work on, all right, what is it that you can do to build your psyche and feel good for the 30 minutes or 45 minutes of the interview? And it's the same with a salesperson. You've been thrown out of the last 17 offices. How do I build my psyche to get into the next interview? So I looked at ways that made people feel slightly better, and I understood. I think I was always reasonably good at complimenting people, but I never had set it as a micro goal. But I realized, hey, it does work. And things like addressing people with their name. what's happened there, my recollection is that I was doing a number of different events, and people would come up to me afterwards and say, "You're amazing at remembering our people's names." And I would kind of say, "No, not really. All I know is I met you before the keynote presentation, and I mentioned your name in conversation, etc. And I mentioned Joe's name or Jose's name in conversation as well." But I began to appreciate the power of the name and just being recognized. Over a period of time, all of the elements were there, but then my job, and I think your audience's job as well, how do you package it? And as a speaker, I package anything that's got more than 2 points in it in an acronym, because it's easy to remember. And so exactly how I came up with the CHAPS acronym, I think it was probably just toying around with the various ideas, and I just struggling around, and yeah, CHAPS. And I know it's not a word that's used as much in the US as it is in the UK or Ireland, but since the English Premier League started going on Peacock and NBC, Rebecca is who's a anchor for the soccer program. She's trying to say, "Okay, chaps, what did you think of that afternoon now? Great football, wasn't it, chaps?" So
There you go. Can you walk us through a time, either in your life or someone that you've helped apply this to, where they've utilized CHAPS or even just the GAB process in general, where they've been able to go kind of from pain point to dream desire using that system?
well, I tell you what, I got a text yesterday from forgive me now for a second. Can I find it now? I got a text yesterday from a client that I spoke to about 4 months ago. She is on vacation at the moment, and I put out a video yesterday about the power of a compliment. She's on my subscriber list, and she said she saw the video, and she said, "Conor, I really appreciate the concept you gave us a couple of months back. It's made a big difference to me. It's made a huge difference to my husband." Okay, and I was trying to find that text there. It only came in yesterday or the day before, and I showed it to my wife, and I said, "That's brilliant to get affirmation." And I actually went back to the lady and I said, "Thanks a million for the affirmation. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully we get some more business out of her." But for everyone, myself included, and I said this to my wife, I said, affirmation is just what makes it all worthwhile. So that's one example. The other example, if I could give you, then in a larger organization, is that I was doing something with a food company last year, large organization, and they had manufacturing plants in 4 different states in the Midwest. So I was doing work with their supervisors and team leaders there. Without going into too much detail, I've got testimonials from the HR VP saying that their retention levels increased by about 25%, which he says directly attributable to you. But one of the interesting things there, Dave, is that part of the exercises I do is when I ask, "What do you want to be famous for?" Now, I was dealing with people who are on the factory floor in messy, cold conditions in food manufacturing. And it's not a fun environment. So I was dealing with the supervisors and what's called the team leaders. And we'll be working through this, and I'd say, "All right, what do you want to be famous for?" And as part of the gift of GAB, B is for behavior. So the exercise I give them is, I'd like you to come up with 3 attributes that you would like your work colleagues to say about you, the people who are reporting into you or you're giving orders to, etc., when you're not in the room. And with about 140 people, I think, over across the 4 different states that were the supervisors and team leaders, without exaggeration, over 100 of those little post-it notes had words like, "What do you want to be famous for?" "Compassionate," "kind," "empathy." All of those words were consistently popping up. And here's the thing, Dave, and I make a comment I regularly make. Tell me what job spec says that people should have empathy, be compassionate, and be kind. you'd be pushed to find anything. Maybe empathy pops up now and again. But the fact is that the things that the people they're working with want your boss or your leader to be is to listen to you, to be empathetic, and to show some compassion. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't critique them, coach them, and have a go at them if things don't go right. But you've got to balance it. And that's another example of an organization. That was a much larger organization. The previous one I mentioned where the lady just sent me the text, that was for a healthcare group over in the West Coast. So they're just some particular examples of how it's worked. And if you want a final one, a couple of months back, I phoned a client, and she told me, I'd done an event about a year ago, and she told me, Conor, give me a shout in about 6 months' time. So I phoned her after 6 months, and I said, hi, Mary, this is Conor Cunneen. Now, I hadn't spoken to her in 6 months, so I was beginning to think, like, all right, she's going to say, Conor Cunneen, who are you? No exaggeration. Hi, Mary, this is Conor Cunneen. Conor, how are you? I've got the CHAPS acronym on a post-it note on my computer right here in front of me. I think it's brilliant. So, boy, did I get off that phone feeling good. Now, do you think I got that piece of business? I didn't. The reason why, now I'm still on our hit list, but the budget they had planned for it didn't come through or something like that. So I'm still waiting to get picked up by her on that. But she said, you're going on our list and we're going to use you at some stage, definitely. But that again is a real sense of affirmation as to the power of the gift of gab, macro goals, what do we want to be famous for, and the CHAPS acronym.
Love it, Conor. If people were interested in working with you, budget pending, and they wanted to learn a little bit more about you, CHAPS and Gab and all that, kind of give them a little spiel as to, again, like what you do and how people can get started for you.
Okay, all right. Just one quick point on budget pending. I mean, when you're negotiating with someone on pricing, it can obviously be challenging and tense, okay? So when someone asks me, what would your fee be for a keynote, I respond, I normally like to start negotiating at $100,000. And they either crack up or they fall off the chair kind of thing. But what it does though, and then I say, by the way, I'm not a very good negotiator, all right? But what it does though, it takes some of the tension out of the negotiation on pricing. So if you can, and the point about that one, Dave, is that that's one single line that I came up with sometime, got a really good reaction on the other side, but I can now use it every single time I'm negotiating with someone. So if you're in sales and you've got one or two good lines and you're going back to different customers on a regular basis, you've got really good material to reinforce your sales message and connect better with them. So bottom line is, it's Conor Cunneen, IrishmanSpeaks, all one word. That's the website. My mission is to improve people, performance and productivity with a smile. I love to speak to any organizations, either as a keynoter, I do some MC work as well, but also as a facilitator to improve your people, your performance and your productivity. And we do it with a smile, I promise. We might even go for a Guinness afterwards.
Lots of smiling after a few Guinnesses.
Yeah.
Awesome. But that's all today for today's episode of Personal Brand Blueprint. A big thank you to Conor for being on today's show and walking us through the CHAPS framework and the GAB framework and everything. To learn more about how to launch, grow, and monetize your personal brand, make sure to subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast. Follow me, Dave Polykoff, on LinkedIn, and check out zenpost.com to see how we can work together directly. Links to all three of those, plus all the links to Conor's services and socials, will be in the show notes below. Thank you again, Conor, for being on, and that is this week's episode of the Personal Brand Blueprint.